Happy Thanksgiving and welcome to Football Letter Live. Tonight we welcome volunteer leader and CEO of Success with Honor, Mark Toniatti. Mark will share why he's inspired to give back and let Penn Staters know more about Success with Honor, a name, image, and likeness group dedicated to helping Penn State student athletes navigate new NIL opportunities. We've got video highlights and photos from last week's win over Rutgers, and we'll let all alumni and fans know how they can get involved with the Alumni Association and with Penn State. As always, Football Letter Live is member supported, and we are so grateful to have your support. If you're a Penn Stater, you belong in the Alumni Association. And if you love Penn State, you're in the right place. This is Football Letter Live. Well, welcome into a Thanksgiving edition of Football Letter Live. I am your host, Paul Clifford, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, John Petishnock. John, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, Paul. Just want to let the audience know this is Tuesday night. We're recording it early this week, and so you are watching this Thursday night at 7. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone tuning in. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Paul, to Vince, to Mark for joining us tonight, and it's always a good time to kind of just catch your breath, reflect, and, kind of look back on the season that it's been up to this point. And also, we've also got some more football coming our way this weekend.
Absolutely. A nice trip over to Rutgers for a big 55-10 victory. I think the best thing about the victory, John, was we got a lot of guys into the game, right? A lot of experience experience getting players on the field, some for the first time in a couple weeks. And so it was good to go out to New Jersey. It was colder than I would have preferred, but again, we went out there on a business trip and came home with a W.
Yeah, and so this is noteworthy. So again, today, Tuesday, during James Franklin's press conference, he said that every defensive player who traveled to the game played in the game, got live game snaps. I don't know if I've heard of that happening before. And so when you can win, when you can avoid injuries for the most part, when you can get players game reps and do all of that while winning, you're going 1-0 that week, as James Franklin likes to say. You're also building momentum for later in the season and also into the future. And so, yeah, all things considered, pretty successful weekend trip to Rutgers for the football team. And I also think for us, got to spend some time with our alumni volunteers Friday night and Saturday at the Roar Tour. Got to spend some time with Craig Fayek. And so always good to travel when you don't have to fly. So we were able to drive to Piscataway, got back over the weekend safely. And now we're looking forward to a nice senior day on Saturday at Beaver Stadium.
Absolutely. John, we mentioned it's Thanksgiving Day. But on Tuesday in the press conference, James Franklin was in I don't want to say that he was in a good mood, right? Because his coach is always in a pretty good mood, but he was relaxed and comfortable and entertained some, I guess, more than unusual questions at the press conference.
Yeah, so the press conference during Thanksgiving week, it's always a little bit different. It's always a little more jovial. I mean, it helps when the team wins the previous week, coming off a 55-10 win. And so like a lot of times like he'll ask, beat writers if they prefer turkey or ham, or, the beat writers will ask James that question. Having James been here for like 8 or 9 years, sometimes guys don't, they'll ask different questions. But if you asked a question at today's press conference, you were asked a question yourself before James would answer, asking what you preferred. And so, a lot of times if people are new to the beat, they're not used to it. It's just a little bit of a light-hearted moment with James. But yeah, you're right. He was very happy, in a good mood. And somebody asked him toward the end of the press conference, they said, you look like you're more at peace. Is it fair to say that? And for the most part, he agreed. It's obviously would be great to go 15-0 every year, but you look at the success the team is having this season. You talk about his new contract. he's always been talking a lot about alignment recently, and he feels like that's in place. He had nice things to say about Neely Bendapudi, our university president, called Pat Kraft aggressive, which I think we can all agree with. Just watch the sidelines during a Penn State game.
Right.
Like Pat Kraft needs a get back guy. Like NFL coaches, like they're always running onto the field. Like Pat Kraft needs a get back guy. And so, high spirits on for the press conference today. And I think, if you go out on Saturday, you take care of business, you send out the seniors the right way. There's just been a lot of talk lately and really all season about being in a moment of appreciating your blessings. And I just think today was kind of another sign of what you've been seeing from the team all year.
Absolutely. Well, John, it's one of my favorite weeks of the year. In addition to it being Senior Day, sponsored by the Penn State Alumni Association, it's also Land Grant Trophy Week, right? Now, if people are new to Penn State football or don't know what the Land Grant Trophy is, here is my replica. Vince, maybe we can give them a look at what it's supposed to look like. But one of my finest arts and crafts moments was during COVID when I created my own version of the Land Grant Trophy, the most hideous trophy in all of college sports. John, you've heard me say it before. I'll say it again. I believe the loser of the game should have to take this trophy home. I don't think it should be for the winner. I know it's not necessarily your cup of tea, but it's always a little bit fun leading up to the Michigan State game.
No, I mean, I sort of, when we first joined the Big Ten, we kind of went through that, and, there was sort of I don't want to say force, but, I think the folks who did the scheduling envisioned that this would turn into more of a rivalry game. It was always supposed to be the game to end the season. And sometimes it works out that way. Sometimes it doesn't. I like it is genuinely heavy. And after a game, players are exhausted. So I think I kind of like the losing team has to carry the trophy over and then lift it up, because it is a beast. But hey, look, if you get that trophy, that means you won. And so you're going to be smiling. But yeah, it's not, I think it's funny that it's lasted this long. I think the people involved, the folks in the Big Ten offices, they have to be laughing about how much traction this gets, because if you wanted to change it, you would have changed it. And so I think now there would be an outcry from alumni and fans saying, no, we've got to keep this. It's whatever you want to call it, but it's our whatever you want to call it. Whatever, however you want to describe that trophy, it's ours. It's the Big Ten's, and so. But yeah, I do like kudos to you on a lot of people took up hobbies during the pandemic. I like the attempt there at arts and crafts. I said before, maybe we should sponsor a build your own land grant trophy. People can put their own twist on it, their own spin. Sounds like a really great sponsorship opportunity for the Alumni Association and possibly somebody else listening in. And I think that would maybe give the fans an opportunity to get involved in a different way.
Absolutely. Well, John, look, sometimes this takes on, it's at the right time of the season, right? I've seen some of our students dress up as the Land Grant Trophy for Halloween. It makes appearances where you don't necessarily expect it. It's also funny, both institutions have a trophy case for the Land Grant Trophy. And so it's always funny when I've been on Michigan State's campus after Penn State has beaten them, and it's just an empty trophy case. So that's always a little unusual. But yes, Land Grant Trophy. More importantly, John, Michigan State coming to town, an opportunity to go 10-2, which by any measure is a successful season.
Yeah, it really is. And I feel like before, and I think in many cases it still is, a 10-win season separated teams that had a good season from teams that had a great season. Of course, now with the playoff and with NIL, which we're going to talk about with Mark, there are different barometers for success. But certainly I think at any level, when you get 10 wins, especially 10 wins in the regular season, I think that's meaningful. It's also noteworthy. I saw Mel Tucker say on Monday during his press conference that his team will not be using pads in practice this week. They've had some issues on their own, and they've had to suspend some players. And so just from a depth standpoint, they haven't been practicing with pads. They're coming off a disappointing loss to Indiana last week. And so I believe, I don't usually pay attention to this. I think Penn State is close to a 20-point favorite, just similar to Rutgers. And so you would think if Penn State just goes out, takes care of business, they'll end 10-2. And by the way, so this would be the fourth 10-win season under James Franklin. However, Penn State's never won 10 games. They have 11 wins. And so they actually have 3 11-win seasons with James, no seasons with exactly 10 wins. And so you go out on Saturday, you win, you actually set yourself up for the opportunity to have 4 11-win seasons since 2014. And yeah, we'd have to look that up. The number of teams that can boast that is pretty small. And so, look, obviously you want to beat everyone on your schedule, but there's a lot more positives going on in Happy Valley than negatives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll get back to talking a little bit about Rutgers and Michigan State, but let's go ahead and welcome our guest tonight, Mark Toniatti, class of 73. He is the CEO of Success with Honor. More importantly, to the Alumni Association, he and his wife, Ann, are both life members of the Penn State Alumni Association. Mark, welcome to Football Letter Live.
Paul, John, thank you very much for having me. And thanks, happy Thanksgiving to both of you and your families.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Having you here.
John, let's start right at the Mark. Let's start right at the beginning. Before you got involved with Success with Honor, before NIL was ever a thing, you have been giving back to Penn State as a volunteer, as part of your philanthropy. I mentioned that you're life members of the Alumni Association. Talk about your involvement with Penn State.
Well, my involvement in Penn State goes back, after being a student, goes back to the early mid-1980s. The first campaign Penn State had in the 80s, I was part of the committee to help raise the funds. At that time, I guess that was Bryce Jordan, who was president at the time, and just followed that through over the years, being on a number of committees, both for the university academically and athletically. I was on the committee that actually put together the point system for the Nittany Lion Club, and then followed it after retirement. I was up in State College with a very close friend of mine, who I also worked with at the firm, and his name was Bill Jaffe. Bill passed away recently, and Bill and I were very close friends. And Bill had one piece of advice for me, and what he said was, get involved. And I tried to take that to heart, and I tried to be involved in a number of committees, chaired several of them, and just for the love of the university.
I'm glad that you mentioned Bill Jaffe's name. Passed away in the past year, but was a force here at Penn State. I remember when I got here, I'll share a quick Bill Jaffe story. When I got here, about 6 months after taking this job, he invited me out for breakfast, and it was my first time going to the waffle shop. And he said, now, when you come to the waffle shop, make sure you bring cash because you're paying. So,
yeah. Well, no, Bill took Ann and I, and Bill and Honey, his wife, Honey, took Ann and I under her wing and introduced us around the university and gave us an opportunity to let people know that we were willing to give our time. And that's what we did. And it cannot have been more rewarding to me and my family. We're enjoying our time at living in State College.
So name, image, likeness, it's taken the college football world by storm, the college athletics by storm. What is name, image, and likeness, and how does it help student athletes?
Well, name, image, and likeness, by the definition, we call it NIL. The NIL is an opportunity for students to monetize their name, image, and likeness. Prior to July 1, 2022, when the Supreme Court ruled in the Alston case that you cannot stop an athlete from earning money, monetizing their brand, it has taken on a life where individuals are earning, well, I classify it as dignity money, earning money that they could go out and earn that they couldn't do as a student, as student athlete. Student athletes spend a lot of their time on their craft for the university, and they can't go out and get jobs. And we also have to remember that most of our student athletes are not on full scholarship, and therefore this is where name, image, likeness gives them an opportunity to do a number of things. Where Success with Honor comes in is we help try to educate our the athletes that we work with in the area of working with contracts. They're 18 to 22 year olds. They're now learning how to understand a contract and to fulfill that contract. They understand what marketing is and what branding is. We also stay with them and work with them because they're earning money to how to manage money as well. And then finally, we stay with them right through the year to understand that they pay taxes. And we work with them. So we want to make sure that they understand the total scope of what they are getting involved in.
Now, Mark, name, image, and likeness when it first kind of arrived on the scene, if you will, it was about the individual student athletes monetizing their name, right? Going out and looking for sponsors. And then shortly thereafter, groups started to emerge because there was the thought that student athletes needed help in this space, right? Because they're spending a lot of time in the classroom, a lot of time perfecting their craft, a lot of time in training and whatnot, and some of the NCAA rules that were in existence around them being able to have jobs. The NIL collectives started to pop up to help student athletes on this NIL journey. You're the CEO of Success with Honor. Talk a little bit about how that organization came about and what your purpose is.
Well, we came about by a phone call. We received a phone call from the athletic department back in February, and asked five of us to become the collective for Penn State Athletics, preferred NIL for Penn State Athletics. So what the five of us did is we made a pledge at that time that none of us would ever take a dime out of the collective, and our focus was to help the student athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness, to be able to earn some money where they can either help pay, if those who are not on full scholarship, pay for books, pay for tuition, or those that need some cash to have, I used the word dignity money, take their girlfriend, boyfriend out to dinner or a movie, something along those lines. So that's where we really got involved, is to help our athletes, and it came about by a phone call from Penn State.
So, Mark, at Penn State, obviously football is huge. We all know that. But beyond that, we've got 31 athletic programs. That's one thing that distinguishes Penn State from other universities. 31 is the high end on how many varsity sports you can have. Success with Honor supports all of the varsity programs here at Penn State. So if you don't mind, could you share a couple examples of how you support, our highly competitive national championship winning teams across the entire athletic spectrum?
Sure, and that's an excellent point, because one of the objectives when asked to start Success with Honor was to take care of all of our athletes, all 850 or so athletes, of which less than half of them are on full scholarship. And we've been able to work with, right now, we have been able to compensate 29 of the athletes in 29 of the 31 sports, with a directive for the staff that I've mentioned. I want the other two, and very shortly we will have been able to have a contract with a student from all 31 sports. What we have done, for example, in women's soccer, we have a student athlete who was won the. If you're at the football game, you saw on the scoreboard 5 of our athletes to talk about Success with Honor and the NIL. One of the athletes was we had 5 different sports. One was a women's soccer player. We also have a program once a week called the Success with Honor Show. John Brinkus, I need to remember the name, John Brinkus. He was on ESPN with Sports Science. He does interviews with our athletes, and we have a women's soccer player on John's show. In women's volleyball, we had athletes sign autographs at Spikes games, attended tailgates. Let me back up for a second. Why Success with Honor? Why do you need a collective? And let me start there. In a sense, is an individual cannot go out and hire and pay a student athlete. it has to go through some type of organization called a collective. Companies can either work through a collective, or they can use Success with Honor to do all the paperwork and legwork for them. But an individual cannot do that. So individuals at tailgates wanted a number of athletes, wanted an athlete to come to their tailgate, and we would make the arrangements. And we've had women volleyball players go to tailgates and fulfill that responsibility. When they're doing this, they're getting compensated for that. Also, in women's volleyball and in other sports, we have individuals actually have their own merchandise, where they have clothing online where they receive the profits from the sale of those products and so on. So again, in multiple ways, we get them involved with autograph sessions. Another one that's been very successful are clinics. We have our student athletes put on clinics, either in wrestling or football and so on, and that's been very successful with the fans and helpful. Which then they also do charity work as well. So we organize all of that for our athletes in all of the sports.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Ali Schlegel featured on the scoreboard at Beaver Stadium. I'm the proud owner of a John Hara Champs T-shirt.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we see evidence of this all over the place. You go to some of the downtown bookstores and you can actually buy T-shirts with a number and a player's name on the back. And so we're starting to see the evidence and all of this come to fruition for our student athletes.
Right. One of the things, Paul, is that just recently the state of Pennsylvania rescinded or changed a rule when Success with Honor, excuse me, not Success with Honor, but when the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that students can monetize their name, image, and likeness, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, Pennsylvania legislation passed a law restricting certain activities. They rescinded that 49-0, and Governor Wolf signed it. Now the university itself can get involved. We can work directly with development and the Nittany Lion Club and so on to get the message out that we are doing this the right way. We are doing this, people call the Penn State way, that if you were running a collective, this is the way you would want it to run. We're crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, making sure that the way the NCAA wanted it to run, that's the way we're running it. And I think our alumni want to hear that. They want to know that we're not doing anything that some of the things they read in the paper, that's not us. And I think that's key. And that's what we're doing for our athletes and for our university.
Mark, when you listen to James Franklin talk, right, he always dives into the values of the football program, right? And one of the values is compete in everything we do. Mm-hmm. And now that NIL is part of the college football landscape, well, we all know Coach wants to be competitive in the NIL space. Right. Talk about what that means from a Success with Honor standpoint and a football competitiveness standpoint.
Yeah, well, we have a challenge. We have a challenge to make Success with Honor and for the football program as successful as possible. We're competing, and we want to continue to compete with at the highest level. We want to compete with the Ohio States, the Michigans, the schools down south that the top 10 schools in the country. And to do that, we need the support of our alumni and to raise the funds in order to help maintain and retain our student athletes here at Penn State. Coach Franklin has talked about what schools like Ohio State are doing and raising, and there's no reason why we can't do the same. Although we are in Center County in central Pennsylvania, we are not in a state capital like Columbus. We're not near a major industry like Detroit, where Ann Arbor is. We have the best alumni association, best alumni in the entire country, the largest alumni in the entire country. And we know from all the fundraising that is done in the past for the university or so, when the alumni know that there's a need for making Penn State successful, they've always stepped to the plate, and I know they always will. And all we need to do is educate them and communicate with them on what Success with Honor is doing for Penn State and for Penn State athletics.
So, Mark, you had mentioned some of the opportunities and the events earlier, whether it's an autograph signing or things like that. During those opportunities, the alumni and fans, they're getting to know the student athletes on a more personal basis. You know, in football, they're in pads, they're in uniforms. You don't always get to see their face like in other sports. You know, what's the value in that, and kind of like the reaction that the student athletes have and the alumni and fans have, and kind of like having that moment?
But the student athletes actually, they really enjoy it. They enjoy getting to know the people who are cheering for them. And obviously the fans just love being around our student athletes. They represent themselves so well that we're so proud of who they are, what they are, and the way they perform, and the way they are as young men and young women. So this is something that everybody benefits when they get a chance to take off their uniform and spend some time with our alumni. I said we have alumni who have gone to Ali Holland from women's volleyball has been at tailgates where a group will actually hire us or contract with us, so we will find an athlete to actually join them at their tailgate. Obviously, it's off season when they do this. And we're not getting a football player before the game, but we can get wrestlers, we can get fencers. It doesn't matter. All of our athletes, track and field, cross country, everyone represents them so well, and we're so proud of our Penn State athletes.
Yeah, Mark, you know, one of the things that I don't think that the casual college sports fan realizes is that there are scholarship limits on many of our teams, right? A football team carries anywhere from 100 to 125 players, but they're only allowed to have 85 of those players on scholarship.
Yes.
I think of wrestling, right? We have some of the most accomplished wrestlers in the world wrestling here at Penn State, and only 9.5 scholarships are spread out amongst those athletes. There's 10 positions on a wrestling team. So
it's actually 9.9.
Oh, 9.9.
How's that for a crazy number?
Right.
Thank you, NCAA.
But it's fair to say that if 9.9 gets spread out across 25, 30 wrestlers in the wrestling group, right, that you're going to have All-Americans, you're going to have national champions paying tuition, paying to go to school here. So I think the myth of all of our athletes are on a free ride is something that I don't think the casual college sports fan realizes.
You're absolutely 100% correct. And if we can help the families pay for a little tuition, pay for their books, they appreciate it tremendously. I had comment from one of our athletes, and a very senior athlete, captain of their team, turned and said, "I'm so grateful for what you're doing, because now I don't have to ask mom and dad for spending money or gas money." I think that's fantastic to be able to do that. And these are great young men and young women.
Mark, earlier you talked about the need for alumni to get involved with Success with Honor. How can people find more information about your collective, and where can they go to get that information?
Yeah, the information, we're looking at our alumni as, again, right now, obviously a priority for us right now is football. As the season comes to an end, we're trying to raise as much as we can for all sports, but we're also, we're looking right now at football. Let me just say that Penn State fans have always been fans for over 100 years. There's been nothing like the Penn State fan. Today, because of NIL, the Penn State fan have now become stakeholders in the success of Penn State athletics. And we're asking our fans to get on successwithhonor.com. That's one word, successwithhonor.com, and become a subscriber. Help us out. help out the university, help out your fellow student athletes, and we will continue to be successful. We just love watching. I love watching our athletes perform. I have season tickets in many of the sports, and I go to many of the games. Living in State College, I have an advantage that others don't have, and frankly, I take advantage of that by being around our student athletes.
You see it scrolling on the bottom of the screen. Learn more about Success with Honor at www.successwithhonor.com. You can see that. Go visit their website to learn how you can help student athletes here at Penn State in a new and different way. Mark, thanks for all you continue to do to help our student athletes and to help Penn Staters win on and off the field. Thank you.
John, Paul, thank you very, very much. I appreciate you having me. And again, I wish you both a very, very happy Thanksgiving and a great holiday season coming up. I'll see you at the bowl game.
All right. Take care, Mark.
Sounds good, Mark. Appreciate you. Thanks.
Right, thank you.
Well, hey, great to catch up with Mark Toniatti. He didn't go into it as much as I would have loved him to, but the guy, if there is a volunteer experience that exists at Penn State, Mark has served in that role. I know he has served with the Nittany Lion Club. He served on campaigns. Really, Penn State is in his heart. And so to have a person serving as, I can't think of a better person to serve as CEO of one of our NIL collectives than Mark Toniatti. So it's good. It was good to have him on to kind of talk about, I think, a topic that mystifies a lot of people, and yet it's going to be the difference between whether we're able to be competitive long term in a number of our sports.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to hear from Mark. I mean, Mark is someone who's invested in Penn State. That's to say it lightly. And so you need folks who are invested, who are committed, who are passionate about the university. And look, NIL is still evolving, even if it's something you follow on a regular basis, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, we know that it will exist in some form. We know that it will have an impact on the success of collegiate teams across the country and across all the sports. And so, look, things change from generations to generations. Sports incorporate new rules, expansion, Big Ten playoffs, all those types of things. NIL is another one of those changes. And despite even with all those changes, Penn State has remained competitive across all of its sports over many, many decades and generations. And so while NIL is new, I think Penn State is equipped to be successful in this new area. But, to Mark's point, people need to get involved, to get engaged. And we also need to have information available because, to your point, maybe the casual fan, they're looking for opportunities and options. And so I think this is one.
Absolutely. Again, their website is successwithhonor.com. Thanks again to Mark Toniatti for joining us. John, let's take a look back at our trip to Rutgers, right? We have talked about the Friday night mixers that our chapters do, but we had a chance to meet with Katie Dunn, who is the president of the Central New Jersey chapter.
Yeah, Katie's a superstar. We talked with her Friday night at a bowling alley. It was funny. We shared some of the pep band's performance and the cheer team. Somebody asked, is this the first for the pep band playing in a bowling alley? And we said, actually, the band has prior bowling alley experience, not only at this venue in Rutgers, but also at Michigan. So Paul, you caught up with her. We caught up with her for a few minutes, and we also have just kind of the sights and sounds. And you could tell she was very excited. She has some Penn State bling on that people were commenting on Facebook. And so, we're happy to bring that video for our audience tonight.
Penn Staters, I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and we are here with the Central New Jersey chapter at their Friday Night Mixer Bowl Over Rutgers theme. And I'm here with the Central New Jersey chapter president, Katie Dunn. Katie, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, Paul. How are you? I'm excited.
I'm excited as well. Tell us what's going on here.
So tonight we are bowling over Rutgers, and we're having a great family event with bowling, food, the pep band, the cheerleaders, and the Nittany Lion, and of course lots of great prizes and lots of Penn State spirit.
Absolutely. And tomorrow, over 900 people signed up for the pep rally at Rutgers. Craig Fayak is going to be our guest speaker. Craig Fayak, as a freshman, kicked the game-winning field goal to beat number 1 Notre Dame. I remember it like it was yesterday. I know you were on campus when that happened. Tell us that story.
Yeah, so I was a senior that year. So I actually lived a little bit off campus. We watched the game on a 13-inch television, and my roommate was not 21 at the time. So when the game was over, she's like, go out, go out, go out. I went to catch a bus downtown, and you could hear the hum of downtown State College. And then I meandered my way to the Skeller with a bunch of friends. And to this day, I have one collegiate newspaper that I cut for my 4 years at Penn State, and is that cover from that Monday.
That's an amazing story. I remember after he hit the field goal, I was still in high school. My dad said, take the flag off the house and run around the neighborhood. We went up in front of all the Notre Dame fans and waved the flag. Tomorrow's going to be a lot of fun, right? Craig Fayak's going to be there, and we're looking forward to welcoming a bunch of Penn Staters here to Central New Jersey. I want to take the opportunity to thank you for all you do for the Alumni Association and bringing Penn Staters together as a chapter president. Always good to catch up with Katie Dunn and all of our volunteers. Yeah, John, the lighting on the video wasn't ideal, but it set the mood for that great event. And yeah, just the bowling alley is always a fun venue. We use it in Central New Jersey. We've used it at Michigan before. And so don't knock it until you try it.
Yeah, and look, we were going to go into another area of the bowling alley where the lighting was better, and we thought, look, this is what it's like tonight. Like, let's place Penn Staters in the venue. This is what it's like. Speaking of New Jersey volunteer leaders, I also heard actually today on Tuesday from Jamie Culinary. She enjoyed the win over Rutgers, as you can imagine. And so anything Penn State can do to help all the Penn Staters living in New Jersey win those bets with colleagues and coworkers about, Penn State versus Rutgers. Yeah, it was fun to catch up with Katie, and it was really a fun event. I mean, look, when you've got the pep band and it really is exciting for, especially for the Penn Staters who live out of state and can't get back all the time. And so absolutely. Pep band, cheer team, they can play any venue.
Absolutely. Pep band, cheerleaders, the Nittany Lion, right? They are all of the kind of repeatable elements that are at the Roar Tour. And if you haven't been to a Roar Tour this year, we hope to see you next year when we go on the road with Roar Tour 2023, or maybe perhaps you'll be in Philadelphia for the game at the Palestra, and we'll bring the Roar Tour basketball edition to Philadelphia. But John, what was different about this one was the appearance of Craig Fayak. And whenever we have a letterman say, hey, I want to get up on stage and say a few words. I know there's a brief moment of panic, and then we overcome that and let them go ahead and take it away. And they always do a fantastic job. I think we actually have a clip of Craig speaking to the Roar Tour 2022 Rutgers edition.
Thank you, everybody. It's great to be here. One of the an interesting, story and anecdote after that Notre Dame game was on the flight back from Notre Dame to State College, I was sitting next to one of our graduate assistant coaches, and a really smart coach, and we were talking about what a great game it was and how it unfolded and what a great win it was for our team and what it meant for me and my career. And we had a great 20 minutes, and then he had to get back to working because we were playing Pitt the next day or next week. And that graduate assistant coach was Greg Schiano. Yeah. And obviously Rutgers head coach today. So it was a great moment and very special. I love Greg, respect him, but just not today between 3:30 and 7:30. Right? So one of the things I love about being at these kind of events is when I look out in the crowd, right, I see lots of different backgrounds, I see lots of different experiences, but we all have a common love for this university. Right? We're all so different, yet we have something that's a common bond for all of us. And so whether you're from the class of 52, right, the class of 92, the class of 22, we all share this common love for Penn State, right? We all want to do things, with excellence, right? We all want to do success with honor, right? We want to make sure that we're team first, right? We want black shoes, no names, right? Keeping the team first. And ultimately, we want to make sure that we're doing the right things for our communities, right? The right things within for our families, doing the right things ultimately for the world, right? To just make the world a better place. So my message to all of you is, first of all, let's make sure we don't take this for granted, right? Let's be thankful for all of this, and let's all continue to do our part in paying it forward, right, in our communities and just using our Penn State community to do that. So again, I love seeing everybody out here. Now, we have a job though to do today as Penn Staters, right? We have to turn that stadium into Beaver Stadium East today. And I will tell you as a former player, you know, when you put on those white uniforms, those flashy, beautiful white uniforms, it does feel different. You walk out in the stadium and you don't notice anyone, the colors are different, but the moment that you see the blue and white and you hear people cheering from you, it just makes you feel home and gets you focused on what you have to do today. So we have a lot ahead of us. We have maybe a New Year's Six bowl game ahead of us, hopefully, right? We have a future, hopefully, you know, national championship next year that we're going to get to. But in order to do that, as Coach Franklin says, we have to do what? Go 1-0 this week, right? 1-0 this week. In order to do that, we all need to do our part in the stadium. So, can I count on you guys to do that? Can I count on you guys to be loud tonight, right? Can I count on you guys to be loud tonight, right? Beaver Stadium East over here. We'll see you over there. Thank you very much. We are.
That was great. I'm fired up. I was standing behind him, but ready for him to point at me. So to tell him that I was ready to go in there. And John, Beaver Stadium East was no lie. I mean, it was probably the first sellout in recent memory at Rutgers. And what would you say? It was 35, 40, 50% Penn Staters?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the game, it was probably closer to 60-40. I was thinking it would be 50-50. And again, like, we're not just saying this. By the time we got to the second half, it was probably like 20-1 Penn State fans to Rutgers. And then, genuinely, by the time we got to the end of the game, there might have been like 200 Rutgers fans in the entire stadium. Like, everybody there was a Penn State fan. And so, yeah, it was just, again, not surprising, but still nice to see.
Yeah, look, we have a good friend who works over at Rutgers. We won't mention his name so that he doesn't get attribution for this comment. But he said, we have to run all of the promotions that we run during the game in the first half, because depending on how the team's playing, the students are going to be gone. So we have to get it all done in the first half for their sponsors so that there's people still left in the stadium.
Yeah, and to their credit, so after we had the Roar Tour set up, I walked around. There were so many Penn Staters in the tailgating lots. We met folks from the Myrtle Beach chapter. I saw Justin Stevens, who's on alumni council and is a great volunteer leader. We had a Penn State graduate make us a pizza right there on the grill. Like, it was genuinely a good time. And so there was so much to do. That they call it the boardwalk area with food and games. And so, for the families living in that area, there was so much to do beyond the game. And so it was really, if you're a Penn Stater and you haven't visited there, there's plenty to do leading up to the game. Obviously, we've got the Roar Tour event, but certainly probably more options there than at your typical away football game, where you can really maximize the time there that you have with your family. Yeah,
absolutely. The game day atmosphere at Rutgers was unlike any that I have experienced at Rutgers. We've had a variety of experiences there in the past where they have been not so friendly. None of those experiences this year. The boardwalk is a fantastic addition to the game day atmosphere, and then in the stadium was unlike other years. So it was as cold as other years, but I enjoyed the trip over there this year.
Yeah, and they have, I'll share this. So they have a cannon there, very similar to other stadiums. They have revolutionary, and the gentleman manning the camera, they dress up in revolutionary gear as if, they're in the 1770s and they're with George Washington. And one of the gentlemen was dressed up like he was in the Revolutionary War, and he was eating a Jersey Mike sub. And I don't think they had Jersey Mikes back at that time. And I wanted to get a photo or a video or ask our photographer, Steve Manuel, and I didn't get to it, but yeah, so you get the authentic feel. It was like the Starbucks in Game of Thrones. You just have to pretend like Jersey Mike's isn't there. But yeah, just, it was a fun atmosphere. And look, anytime we can get to drive to a game, I know we're going to be going to Syracuse in the near future. And so we would expect kind of, alumni to travel to that point too. And so it's, we know that we're going to see more Penn Staters than usual anytime we can get to a road game where we can drive.
Absolutely. Well, hey, speaking of a guy who deserves his own NIL contract, let's bring Vincent Longaro on. He's our producer, does a great job behind the scenes. Vincent, what's going on around campus for Penn State athletics?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a disappointing weekend for a few Penn State teams. Field hockey obviously fell in the NCAA semifinals to North Carolina in a hard-fought game. Women's soccer lost an absolute heartbreaker, led twice in the second half, weren't able to get over the finish line against a really good Virginia team. So their season ends in the Sweet 16. But a shout out to both of those teams. They had incredible seasons, making obviously Penn Staters proud and representing the Big Ten phenomenally in the NCAA tournament. So commiserations to those two teams. But obviously we've got some teams playing really well right now. Women's volleyball with a great win this past weekend. Taking down a top 10 Minnesota team, only moved up to number 11 after that as well, after taking number 3 Wisconsin to 5 sets. I'm not really sure how that happens. I feel like I get on here and complain about every polling system in college athletics every week, but I don't know. Number 11 seems a little low for that, in my opinion. And then the men's hockey team split a series with Michigan State, so they continue to plug along there as well.
Absolutely. The 5-set game against Wisconsin was a thriller. I think Katie's got the team peaking at the right time. And so it'll be good to see them as they progress through the rest of the regular season and then into the NCAA tournament, where I think they can make a deep run.
Yeah, absolutely. They're, going through the Big Ten season, that slate always prepares you for success in the postseason. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the 2 basketball teams, the Lady Lions last night with an incredible 21-point comeback against Syracuse. Absolutely dominated the second half. It was great to see after a bit of a slow start. And then the men's basketball team, I feel like I say it every year about Penn State basketball, that this is the year, but there's just something different about watching this team and how they operate. They've been really impressive this season, a great showing down at the Charleston Classic. Getting a couple of really good wins against Furman and Colorado State, who could easily make the NCAA tournament out of their respective conferences. So if you have the chance, get out and watch both of those programs at the BJC this year. I know men's basketball will be taking on Clemson here in a couple days in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. So 2 teams to watch there, obviously. Yeah,
absolutely. Going 2-3 at a tough Charleston tournament is nothing to hang your head about. The close 2-point loss to Virginia Tech, I think, is actually kind of fuel for the rest of the season too, right? As Coach Drew says, gritty, not pretty. And we got through some of those games and gritted our way to a victory. So yeah, and then the women's basketball game was just crazy, a crazy comeback. They run their record to 5-0, and rank Penn State basketball, rank the men, rank the women. Let's get them into the polls so that Vince can complain about how high or low they are ranked.
I'm not going to yell at Ken Pom, though, who does a great job with the analytical side of basketball. I believe he has Penn State at 31 right now, which if you're a diehard Ken Pom fan, which probably not a lot of people are because, who needs to be in the weeds that much? If you're in the top 30 in Ken Pom, you have a really good shot to make the NCAA tournament. It's obviously early days, but being at number 31 is a significant sign for kind of how this team has played so far.
Yeah, if you're in town after Thanksgiving and looking for something to do, head out Friday night to see the men's basketball team back home again against the Leopards from Lafayette. Tip-off is at 7:00 there at the Bryce Jordan Center.
Yeah, absolutely. And here I pulled up some pictures. Our Charleston chapter had a great event down in Charleston for Penn Staters in that area. Had a post-game kind of mixer down there. We see Joe McDonald, our colleague at the Alumni Association there, posing for a photo. Just an awesome event that they put on down there in Charleston. A great job from our chapter, as Penn Staters are everywhere, as we always say, and they certainly made their presence felt down in Charleston, cheering on the Nittany Lions.
Absolutely. Well, Vince, thanks for joining us on Football Letter Live, and thank you for all you continue to do for the Alumni Association. To you and your family, have a happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you, Paul. Thank you.
All right, John.
Can I say something real quick?
It's your show.
You knew the Lafayette mascot was the Leopards?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I would just mention Lafayette, and then he says the Lafayette Leopards, and my mouth was like agape. I was like, oh my goodness. So
I saw your reaction. I didn't know what you were reacting to. I've actually seen a basketball game at Lafayette. So high school friend of mine played for the Leopards in the mid 90s, and it was great to go down and cheer him on. Shout out to Joe Marshall, a standout player for Lafayette College back in the 90s.
See, I like this. I learned Friday night. I learned about the story about you running around with the Penn State flag. I hadn't heard that before.
Right.
I learned about this. That's all good. And so again, today on Tuesday, Micah Shrewsbury had a call. I asked him about the support that he had in Charleston from our chapter, and his words were, it was a big deal. He talked about the post-game social that the chapter had after their opening game against Furman, which they won. Players' families went there. A couple members from the coaching staff went there, or the Penn State athletic staff that traveled. He said they were talking about it during the trip, that they appreciated the support. Most of the teams they played, or, some of them, Furman and a few others, and Charleston, like, they're in-state schools. You're from Pennsylvania going down to South Carolina. You may not be expecting to walk out and see as much support as he did. But he talked about that, Micah Shrewsbury did, about noticing the fans and the chapter at the games, having that opportunity at the post-game social after the opening night. And so for alumni and fans, when you go to the games, coaches notice, athletes notice. It does make a difference. And so wanted to share that for Micah Shrewsbury saying it was a big deal. And so I'm glad we could get the photos, and glad Joe went down and was able to help make those connections happen.
Absolutely. Well, John, we were a little concerned. Only one guest on the show tonight. We didn't know if we'd be able to fill the full hour, but we were able to do just that. John, thank you for all you continue to do for the Alumni Association and for Football Letter Live. Thank you to Mark Toniatti for joining us here on Football Letter Live. And thanks to all of you for tuning in and for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are
Penn State.